I was 13 when my mom first decided to ruin my Christmas. My name is Bella, and at that age, Christmas meant more than presents or trees. It was the one night I felt special. But that year, my excitement was cut short in a way I could never have imagined. The night before the big school Christmas party, I found my favorite red velvet dress missing from my closet. At first, I thought I had misplaced it. Panic crept in, and I ran to my mom, hoping she had an explanation. "Mom, where's my dress? The party is tomorrow," I exclaimed, my voice trembling with urgency. She looked at me, her face tight with that familiar mix of irritation and superiority, and said, "Bella, you don't need to wear that. It's too much, and honestly, you don't deserve to go." I stared at her, my heart skipping, not fully understanding. I What do you mean? Mom, it's just a dress, I pleaded. She shook her head and didn't answer. Instead, she muttered something about priorities and went back to her room. My stomach sank, a mix of confusion and anger swirling inside me. I searched everywhere, my room, the laundry, under my bed, nothing. And then I smelled it, the faint scent of smoke. I followed it to the laundry room, and my heart dropped. There it was, my red velvet dress charred in the washing machine. She had burned it. My hands shook, tears stinging my eyes. How could she do this? How could someone destroy something that made me feel beautiful, something that I had saved for months to wear at the Christmas party? My world in that instant felt smaller, crueler. That dress wasn't just fabric, it was my hope, my joy, my chance to feel noticed, and she had ripped it away from me. I tried to talk to her. "Mom, why would you do this?" My voice cracked, and for a moment she actually looked at me. "You need to learn your place, Bella. This isn't about you, it's about the family. You always want everything, don't you?" She turned away, dismissing me completely, like I was nothing more than a shadow in the corner of our house. I felt the weight of every Christmas past, every birthday overlooked, every little achievement I had quietly celebrated alone. My mom had always favored my older brother. He got the attention, the praise, the gifts, the trips, and now she had crossed the line, taking away my chance to even enjoy a simple teenage party. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I could hear the wind outside and the faint hum of the city, but inside me, my mind was loud with fury and disbelief. I had spent years learning to keep my emotions hidden, to be the good girl who never complained, who kept the house running while she took credit for everything. But this time was different. This was personal. This was deliberate. I couldn't ignore it. The burning of my dress wasn't just about the party, it was about control, about reminding me that in her eyes, I didn't matter as much as my brother, as she did. And for the first time, I felt that simmering anger morph into something else, into resolve. The next morning, the house was quiet. My mom had gone shopping, leaving my brother and I to get ready for school. I avoided the kitchen, pretending nothing had happened, but every step I took felt heavier, each breath weighted with thoughts of revenge. Not the childish kind, not something that would get me in trouble, but the kind that made a mark, the kind that showed her I was not to be toyed with. I remembered the old Christmas ornaments we inherited from my grandmother, fragile and priceless, the ones my mom always said were too delicate for me to touch. That was the moment I realized I could plan, I could wait, I could use patience as my weapon. For weeks, I observed, quietly, my mom's patterns, the way she treated my brother, the way she boasted about gifts she gave him, the way she flaunted control at every family gathering. And every time she did something like that, my mind made notes. Not the kind of notes a teacher would grade, but the kind that whispered to me, "One day, this will come back to you." I watched as she prepared for another Christmas, her smile bright for everyone else, never noticing the storm brewing quietly inside me. Then came the moment. The Christmas party arrived, and of course, my mom was smug. She expected me to stay home, sulk quietly, and be forgotten, just like always. But this time, I had a plan. I didn't need the dress. I didn't need her approval. I had my mind, my patience, and a little help from someone she never suspected. My aunt, who had always quietly noticed how unfair my mom could be. Together, we crafted a way to make that night unforgettable, a way to flip the tables, a way to show her that the good girl she ignored had finally decided she mattered. By the time I arrived at the party, I wasn't wearing my red velvet dress. I was wearing something my aunt had helped me pick out. A dress that wasn't expensive, wasn't flashy, but carried with it the power of preparation, of revenge, of finally taking my place in the room. And when my mom saw me, her face drained of color, her smile faltering, I realized the satisfaction of standing tall, of showing her that I was more than her control, more than her judgments, more than the shadows she tried to keep me in. That night, everyone saw me. My friends, my classmates, my teachers. They didn't know the years it took to get there. They didn't know the battles, but they saw the result. A girl who refused to be invisible any longer. The night of the Christmas party, I walked in quietly, holding my head high. Bella, 13, finally fed up with being invisible, finally ready to rewrite her story. My mom didn't recognize the girl standing there. She had expected a sulking, quiet child left at home, curled up on the couch with the burnt dress as a reminder of her power. But instead, she saw a calm, collected presence, a girl who had already taken control of her own story. The living room was full of laughter, holiday decorations twinkling, families mingling and exchanging gifts, and I moved through it like I owned every inch. Every step I took was a silent declaration, every glance a quiet rebellion. I noticed my mom's eyes darting around, confusion spreading across her face. She whispered something to my brother, a brief comment that barely left her lips, and I could hear the sharpness in it. She was used to orchestrating attention, to being the center, but now her plan to keep me sidelined had crumbled. I smiled politely at people I knew, nodded at teachers, thanked classmates who complimented my dress. Each interaction was a tiny victory, a reminder that I was seen, that I mattered, that I wasn't the family failure she had labeled me. Halfway through the evening, I caught my mom glaring at me from across the room. She was fuming, I could tell, because the attention I received wasn't supposed to be mine. She had expected pity, embarrassment, maybe some quiet tears, but nothing like this. I could see the storm building in her chest, the way her lips pressed together, the fingers of her hands tightening into fists at her sides. She didn't understand that her power over me had been an illusion for years. I had spent countless nights planning, thinking, saving mental energy for the moment I could step out from the shadow she cast. Then it happened. My aunt, quietly observing, always aware of the injustices I endured, slipped me a small envelope. Inside was a simple card with a note, "Your moment. Make them notice." I didn't need more. The note wasn't about revenge in the childish sense. It was about validation, about reclaiming the power she had tried to strip from me for years. I stood in the center of the room, and with every person who complimented me, who asked about my school, who laughed at a joke I made, I could feel her presence shrinking, my presence growing. I had become the story now, and she wasn't controlling it. Finally, near the punch table, my mom attempted to assert herself. She stepped toward me, hand raised slightly, her voice sharp but faltering. "Bella, come here, sit with your family." I looked at her, calmly, and shook my head. I wasn't ignoring her out of defiance. I was showing her that I was no longer bound by the rules she set. "I'm enjoying the party," I said quietly, each word deliberate. "I think I'll stay right here." The words weren't loud, but they carried the weight of years of ignored emotions, of crushed dreams, of being labeled a failure when all I had done was survive. Her face paled slightly. She hadn't expected resistance, especially not so quietly and confidently delivered. I could see the realization in her eyes, the moment she understood that the control she thought she held had dissolved. It was intoxicating, in a calm, composed way, not because I wanted to humiliate her, though part of me did, but because I finally felt seen, finally felt free. My brother, standing nearby, awkwardly smiled at me, clearly noticing the shift. He had never seen her lose composure in front of family, and now he was watching. By the end of the night, the party was in full swing. People laughed, music played, and I was surrounded by friends and classmates who genuinely appreciated me, without expectation or comparison. My mom tried one last time to pull me aside to whisper some kind of reprimand or guilt, but I simply excused myself. I walked to the balcony, took a deep breath of the cold winter air, and smiled. For the first time in my life, I realized that her words, her attempts to control me, to make me feel like a failure, couldn't touch me anymore. I had taken my power back, quietly, strategically, and with every small victory, I was rewriting my story. That night, as the snow began to fall gently outside, the reality hit her. I wasn't her shadow anymore. The girl who had been pushed aside, ignored, and belittled was finally visible. And that visibility, that acknowledgement from the people who mattered, was her punishment. She hadn't burned just a dress. She had underestimated the girl it belonged to. And now, years of patience, observation, and quiet planning had turned the tables completely. The next morning, the house was quiet. I had returned from the party, heart still racing, adrenaline slowly settling into a deep, simmering satisfaction. Bella, 13, fierce and finally unshackled from the chains of her mother's control, walked through her home with a new perspective. I opened the front door, stepping inside carefully, observing every detail. The Christmas tree in the corner still twinkled, ornaments shimmering in the soft morning light. My mom had worked hard on the decorations, a labor of love she proudly displayed, but her attention had always been selective. I remembered the burnt dress, the whispered orders, the way she tried to erase my excitement, my anticipation, my joy. I walked over to the living room and sat down, taking in the scene. For years, my life had been a background score to her main act. Every accomplishment I had achieved, every moment I had savored quietly, had been overshadowed by the favoritism she showed to my siblings. But that night had changed everything. The party had been my declaration of independence, a statement that I was more than the girl she labeled a failure. I had danced, laughed, and smiled in ways she had never allowed, in ways that reminded everyone, including her, that I existed and I mattered. Then she walked in. My mother, her face a mix of shock, confusion, and simmering anger, stopped at the threshold. She looked at me, eyes widening as if seeing a stranger in my own home. "Bella, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice faltering. She had expected tears, remorse, maybe a quiet apology for her actions, but not the calm, composed figure she now faced. I smiled faintly, not out of cruelty, but because for the first time, I held the power. "I'm living," I said softly. "I'm living my life the way I should have been allowed to all along." Her expression twisted, a mix of disbelief and frustration. She hadn't realized that her attempts to control me, to diminish my joy, had only strengthened my resolve. I stood, walking past her, letting the Christmas decorations brush against my shoulders as I moved deliberately through the house. I paused at the hallway mirror and looked at my reflection. This girl, this version of me, wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't the child who flinched at my mother's harsh words or hid her desires for fear of punishment. She was visible, confident, unstoppable. My mom tried again, stepping closer. "Bella, this isn't right. You shouldn't be—" I interrupted her, voice calm but firm. "I've been told all my life what's right for me, and I've listened. I've obeyed, I've sacrificed, and I've swallowed disappointment after disappointment. But not anymore. I am the one who decides what's right for me now." Her lips trembled, a flicker of guilt passing across her face, but she quickly masked it with anger. "You think you're so clever, showing off at that party. You embarrassed me." I laughed softly, a sound that carried years of suppressed emotion. "No," I said, "I didn't embarrass you. You did that yourself by underestimating me, by trying to control a life that wasn't yours to manage. Tonight, I only reminded everyone, including you, that I exist, and I've always mattered, even when you tried to convince me otherwise." The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the clock. My mom's face went pale as realization set in. She had lost. Not just at the party, not just in front of family, but in the narrative she had controlled for so long.
every whispered insult, every attempt to erase me, every favoritism-laden act had built a wall of resentment in me. That night, I had torn a hole in that wall and stepped through it, finally claiming the life that was mine. I walked over to my old room, now empty, a symbol of years spent unnoticed. I picked up the small ornaments I had collected over the years, little pieces of happiness she had ignored or belittled, and set them carefully on the desk. Each one was a silent testament to my endurance, my patience, and my unwavering strength. My mom watched, powerless, as I reclaimed not just physical space, but emotional territory she had always tried to dominate. Then I heard her voice, softer now, a whisper tinged with regret. "Bella, I didn't realize." I shook my head. "It's too late for that," I replied. "It's not about forgiveness anymore. It's about respect. You will never control me again, and that's the truth you have to live with." She sank into the couch, head in her hands, finally acknowledging the depth of what she had lost. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The power shift was clear, unspoken, and undeniable. As I left the house that morning, stepping into the crisp winter air, the weight of years lifted off my shoulders. I had taken back what was mine, not just belongings, not just opportunities, but my sense of self, my dignity, my voice. The Christmas party had been the spark, but my victory wasn't just that night. It was every choice I had made to stand up for myself, every moment I had resisted being invisible. And from now on, I knew I would always be visible, always be heard, always be free.
By the time evening came, the house felt different. Not empty, not sad, but alive in a way it hadn't been for years. I walked into the living room, my steps steady, my heart calm, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who finally owned her life. The lights twinkled on the Christmas tree, reflecting off the ornaments I had carefully placed, each one a reminder of my resilience. My mom sat on the couch, head hanging low, the weight of her choices finally pressing down on her. She didn't dare look up. My sister hovered near the doorway, uncertain, eyes wide, the first glimmer of understanding dawning in her expression. I took a deep breath, letting the silence stretch. "You know," I said, voice soft but carrying the authority of someone who had endured too much to be ignored. "For years, I let you decide what mattered, how I should feel, what I should do. You burned my dress, humiliated me, and tried to erase me from my own Christmas. And yet, I survived. I grew stronger. I became someone you could never control." My mom's lips quivered. "Bella, I didn't know," she whispered, but the apology sounded empty, weighed down by years of neglect and favoritism. I shook my head slowly. "No, that's the problem. You didn't know, and you didn't care enough to find out. I was invisible while you focused on everyone else. You thought a Christmas dress, a party, or a moment of joy could be erased with fire or words. You were wrong." I walked past her, toward the dining table where years of sacrifices had been ignored. Each plate, each fork, each simple act I had done in silence flashed through my mind. The Christmas lights above shimmered like witnesses to my years of endurance. I paused, letting the weight of every unfair birthday, every overlooked accomplishment, every moment of invisibility settle into the room. "Do you see it now?" I asked, turning slightly, my eyes meeting theirs. "All those years, I was the one who held everything together. All those years, I was the one you ignored while praising her. And now," my voice softened, but the edge of victory remained. "Now, you get to feel what it's like to lose control. You get to witness me living, thriving, and unapologetically existing on my own terms." My sister stepped forward, her voice small but filled with emotion. "Bella, I didn't know it was like this." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, the first recognition of the imbalance I had endured. I nodded. "Now you do. And it's not about blame, it's about truth. I've spent too long bending to fit a world that never made space for me. That ends tonight." I turned to my mom, who now looked older, more fragile. "This Christmas," I continued, voice steady, "was supposed to break me,
but instead it reminded me that I am unbreakable. Your control, your favoritism, your attempts to diminish me, they failed. I am not the scared girl you tried to mold. I am me, and I am free. A silence hung over the room, heavier than any scolding or argument. The truth had landed, undeniable, and it wasn't just words, it was the presence I carried, the aura of someone who had survived, who had taken control of her life, and now dictated the rules. My mom finally raised her eyes, wet and remorseful, but there was no anger left in me to absorb. The power had shifted entirely. I stepped closer to the tree, gently touching one of the ornaments, a small smile forming on my lips. This Christmas had been meant to humiliate me, to remind me of my place. Instead, it became a symbol of triumph, a marker of growth, and a testament to resilience. Every burnt memory, every unfair action, every whispered insult had forged a woman who would never again be silenced. My mom spoke again, voice trembling. "Bella, I'm sorry. I see now." I shook my head softly. Sorry is not enough. Understanding is not enough. Change must come or it's meaningless. But you finally had a glimpse of what it feels like when someone stands up, when someone refuses to be invisible. This is your lesson, and mine was survival and self-respect. I walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered streets, the world quiet, the night still and peaceful. For the first time in years, I felt fully in control of my life, fully acknowledged and fully free. The party, the dress, the humiliation, they were nothing compared to this, the victory of reclaiming myself, of establishing boundaries, of living unapologetically. And in that quiet, powerful moment, I realized something beautiful. The woman I had become was unstoppable, unshakable, and utterly free. Have you ever been stopped from enjoying your own moment by someone you trusted? Comment below and tell me how you would have reacted. I want to hear your story.